Hi, Rachel. Welcome to the podcast.
Whitney. It's great to be here.
So, like I was telling you, it's such a treat for me to have you on this podcast because when I first came across your brand, it was right when you opened it in Chelsea Market because I had just moved out of New York and Chelsea and I had just finished culinary school. And so I was really into finding all the, new and small and local brands that were popping up in New York and the way the food scene was going in New York at that time. So I feel like I've been watching you and have seen the evolution of your stall at the Chelsea market to your products on the shelves at Whole Foods out here in California. And so for me, I've just been such a fan and I've always wanted to learn from you and find out a little bit more about what sparked you to create this brand and your love and connection to sesame and tahini and halva.
Oh, well, thank you for that. Whitney, what year do you remember what year you were? Because we've been open 9 years and the business has changed so much. I'm always curious, what chapter were we in when you last visited our store or first
So
visited it?
I was in New York in 2014, 2015. And so I left New York in 2015, but because I was so active on Instagram back then, everything that came into my feed was all New York even after I left. And so I just kept exploring all the brands that were popping up. And I was already a huge fan of the Chelsea market in that particular neighborhood in Chelsea, because that's where I lived. So I was always exploring what was being created there. And at the time, just before I left New York, I was working at the Fat Radish in the Lower East Side, and they were doing the catering for private events up on the rooftop.
Oh, nice. Okay, so you're a real OG follower because that was right about the time that we launched.
And so when you launched, were you just doing halva and your tahini, or were you also doing the soft serve?
So we started really as a store and only a little store or a shop in Chelsea Market. And at the time back then, our goal and ambition was really just to take sesame seed related products and to breathe some new life into them and to give them a new perspective for people who were used to knowing what maybe tahini was for very simple things, but we really wanted to expand everybody's cooking repertoires. So but the actual avenue was really just a shop. So at that time we did sell halva tahini, and yeah, we did sell the ice cream from the very first day we opened. And that was a really conscious choice because we wanted to help people understand tahini as not just a savory condiment, but as something that had great application in sweets and sweet recipes. And so honestly, when we were coming up with that product, we were like, let's just try. Everyone knows what ice cream is. Most people like ice cream. So why don't we try throwing tahini into something that is already familiar and just seeing if we like it, if other people like it. And it was a great success from the day we started selling tahini soft serve, and even today, it's easily our best selling product.
That's so great. So, what drew you to tahini and halva in the first place? When were you introduced to it, and why did you want to kind of make it your life?
Well, it's been my life for the last 10 years, but I definitely wouldn't say I wanted it to be my life either going forward or going backwards. It's kind of, for me, I'm seeing this as a chapter.
Yeah.
And it's not so much why tahini, it's really more what does tahini and sesame then in a much bigger picture environment or context. And so if I take a little step back, I spent the first sort of 16, 17 years of my professional life. I was a lawyer in Australia. So I had a whole other career that I was excited about, and I was lucky my career took me all around the world, and I worked as a lawyer in London, in Hong Kong, and in Sydney, Australia, which is where I was born. And for me, that fueled a passion for travel. And as I traveled, I was always really excited about the food and the culture and the history of a place. Not so passionate about the law, but lucky that that career just enabled me to see the world. And so when I moved to New York, I just knew I didn't want to be a lawyer. I knew I was interested in other things. And food, culture, history was again just some intersection points for me of, well, what am I interested in? And so at the time I was just, okay, I'll start a shop selling tahini and halva because I happened to have lived and traveled extensively in the Middle East. And they were very popular ingredients in the Middle East. So I knew what they were. And I was more just excited about a different opportunity to be an entrepreneur and a business owner and to work in food. But if I'm being really honest with myself and you and your listeners, it wasn't like, oh, I've always loved tahini so much, and my grandmother was milling her own tahini, and I'm bringing this family recipe. It wasn't that type of story. And I would also say the business has evolved so much and we've changed so much from where we started that, every day is like, well, why am I doing this? Every day is another reason, if that makes sense.
You're a very honest entrepreneur, and I completely understand where you're coming from with that. And I think that if we're all honest with ourselves when our with our careers, that rings true. You kind of have to you're reevaluating the why all the time.
Yeah, 100%. And this is an interesting conversation for me to be having with you at this very moment because I have late teenagers. I've got a 17-year-old and a 19-year-old, and they're evaluating their careers. And the best advice I always give them is like, don't think about your career or your college experience as, the one choice that you're going to make. You're going to make a million choices, and whatever choice you make, the world won't always work out the way you think it is. So just have an open mind about career pivots and try to at least just be passionate about an industry. And food is an industry that I'm passionate about. So as long as I'm centered and focused there, then really anything else can happen.
Yeah, completely agree. It's not for forever. It's just for right now, and we can always evolve it. Um, also as long as the stars align in our favor, we can evolve it.
Yeah.
But I'd love to know, I wasn't familiar with halva until I moved to New York City. Obviously, I think most people listening are familiar with tahini or a sesame paste or a tahini dressing, but I don't think they're familiar with the beautiful halva you guys display. Can you describe it to the people who are listening and explain what it is and how do we eat it?
Great question. And I answer that question pretty much once a minute at Chelsea Market. um, I like to describe halva as the confectionery cousin of tahini. So tahini, again, just to remind people, it's a sesame paste. It's made of ground up sesame seeds. And when you make halva, you combine a very hot sugar syrup and you fold it together with the tahini. And then you can add flavors and nuts and spices, but it's essentially two ingredients. It's tahini and sugar, and it's has a very, very long shelf life. It's or a long history, let's say. And I've written about the history of halva in the cookbook that I wrote this year, but it's honestly it's the original dessert. And it comes, halva is an Arabic word. I'm pronouncing it one way. There's so many pronunciations, but it is an Arabic word that comes from the word halawe, and that means sweet. So it's almost like, the very first dessert sweet that ever existed, or one of, really because it has simple ingredients, it has a long shelf life, so it traveled. And pre-refrigeration, when people didn't have the capacity to worry about, things that they needed, things that didn't spoil, that would travel, that was dense, nutritionally dense. And so that you have one little bite of halva and it's a rich, it's sort of a bit fudgy and a little bit flaky and a bit delicate, but it's very much something you need to taste the texture of to get a sense of it, as much as the taste. And for anyone listening today, I would say to you, please come over and visit our store in New York, because we give out samples as many as you want. We give away, honestly, thousands of tastings of halva every day. And I would say, please come and taste it to try to understand what it is.
Yeah, and it's so beautifully displayed. So it's really a feast for your eye. So I'm in the spice business and I have my own line of organic spice blends and I love those spice markets. And I feel like your display and your setup, it's kind of that same thing. It's taking you back in time and the display is so beautiful and the toppings are so beautiful. What is your favorite topping? Is it pistachios? Is it rose? Is it chocolate? What do you like to have on top?
Well, the pistachio halva is easily our bestseller, so clearly the world likes pistachios at the moment. We sell double that flavor compared to everything else. If you asked me, my favorite flavor is the sea salt dark chocolate because halva is very sweet. But and actually people often say to us, how can I make it less sweet? And or what would, and I would say, well, it's really not meant to be less sweet. It's really more just meant to be eaten in small little bites. But I like the salt addition to halva just because it balances and it rounds out that flavor a little bit more. But back to something you said earlier, Whitney, which I really appreciated, is our store design was very intentional. And I'm glad that you noticed it because we wanted to create and honor a sense of the history of halva because it does have thousands of years of history, but we were very much looking to make it feel modern and contemporary. And so we chose new flavors that didn't exist, or they're not the classic nostalgic flavors, they're new. Or we wanted the branding and the packaging to feel modern, modern so that people were relating to it and not thinking, well, what is this dusty old halva that sat on the grocery shelf or in that ethnic aisle of the supermarket forever, but to think about it in a new way. But for those of you who do visit our store, I hope you notice the little details. So the back wall of our counter, we intentionally have three arches. And those three arches are meant to represent almost like a historic marketplace and to think back about the Middle East and to think about the shuk or the souk, which is, those open air markets of the Middle East. And we were trying to blend all of those things. And so when somebody actually kind of calls out our store design, I really appreciate that.
I'm so glad. Well, that's part of the fun of food is the actual experience. It's not just a transaction. And that's what I also hope to help people understand through the High Vibration Living podcast is it's not transactional. You just don't press a button and it gets delivered to your home. Um, when you're more mindful and thoughtful about what you choose to eat, you feel better. And it should be a fun experience each meal.
No, I agree. We eat with our eyes. And I should give a little shout out to Anna Polonsky, who is a designer. She designs a lot of food establishments. She's got a brand and a retail design company. And it was actually really her working with us in the very early days to think about how we present an old product to a new audience. And I do think food is obviously about taste. It can be about nutrition. It can be about nurturing people, but I would say without it even being, I don't want to sound superficial, but we all eat with our eyes and we also want our food to look appealing. And so being able to combine all of those elements together has just been such a fun, really, really rewarding career experience for me.
Well, I think that makes your product stand out on the shelves when people go to the nut butter section and they're searching for tahini. When you started to get into sourcing your own sesame seeds, your own tahini, what did you learn about the origin of sesame seeds? Where are sesame seeds grown on the planet? Like, where are they actually coming from for our tahini?
Love that question, and I'm about to pull up my cookbook, and this is one of my favorite little double
That's awesome.
spreads.
Yeah.
So in my book, I talk a lot about how sesame is grown because I think again we imagine these little seeds and you sort of visualize them on a hamburger bun, or you might visualize a sesame bagel, or you might visualize, and I think not even appreciating the where they come from is fascinating. So our sesame is primarily grown in Ethiopia. It's that sort of agricultural region, the soil, the temperature conditions, all of those factors are contributing to a good environment to grow the seeds. But also, it's a very manual labor process. So it's not very automated. It's still a very traditional hands-on process. And the skill set of a lot of people in that region is just designed, they have the skills and the ability to do it. They've been doing it for generations. And it's a very important economic driver for the people in that country. I think I read that sesame was about the third most important export of Ethiopia. Don't quote me on that. It might be the third or the fourth, but it's a very, very important economic driver for that country. And they happen to grow really sweet, very oil-rich sesame. So, and that's another good point into tahini that I like to talk about, is that tahini is similar to, say, coffee, or chocolate or wine. Even like the grapes that you grow make different wine. The coffee beans or the chocolate cocoa beans that you grow will influence the final product. And so having a sweet, less bitter type of sesame seed, in my opinion, is what helps us create a really premium, delicious tahini, as opposed to a bitter, chalky type product.
Yeah. As a chef, I have tried every tahini on the shelves at Whole Foods because, right, sometimes you go and oddly enough, the tahini section will be sold out. And so you're sometimes forced to purchase different brands because you need the product if you're catering an event or, doing meal prep for a client. So I've ended up trying everybody. And it's not just a color variance that you see in tahini, but there's a huge taste variance as well. And so it's been really interesting for me just to be forced to try different things and figure out what I like. But it's not like, it's important for people to understand not all peanut butter tastes the same, not all almond butter tastes the same, not all tahini tastes the same. It's like with all food, your source matters. You need to find the brands that you like, and figure out the taste and flavor profile that you like as well.
Yeah. And as a brand, one thing that we're very conscious of and really wanting to do is not just to source great seeds, make good products, but we really are trying to build a community around foodies, people who are looking for recipes or inspiration about what to do with the tahini. And that was the impetus for me writing the cookbook, because I was constantly asked, I use tahini when I make hummus myself occasionally, and it's sitting in my pantry. What else can I do with it? And it's a few years old now. Is it still okay for me to eat it? And I got that question so many times. So I was like, okay, I really have to help people work out what to do with their tahini beyond hummus.
What do you tend to use it most for at home?
I like it in salad dressings. I always just add a squirt of it when I'm roasting a veg. I love to make just sheet trays of roasted veggies. Any season, any time of year, I'll often just roast up some broccoli, roast carrots, roast Brussels sprouts, whatever it is. And I love vegetables. I absolutely have a vegetable forward diet. But sometimes, whether it's a salad or roasted veggies, I really want something that's going to make it feel a bit more rich or a little bit more satisfying, and really kind of add an indulgence to the vegetables or the salad. And I love the tahini adds creaminess and depth and complexity. It also adds nutrition. But for me, it just finishes off that dish. I mean, so I'll always roast. Let's say one of my favorite things is to roast a sheet tray of broccoli. I always roast a lemon with my broccoli. I often roast some garlic. And then at the very end, I take that roasted lemon, I squeeze it all over the veggies. I add a pinch of salt, and then I just take a squeeze of tahini and I just squirt it all. I mean, this is the very simple basic, but the combination of lemon, tahini, salt, a little bit of garlic, and this isn't even a tahini sauce. I'm not making anything. I'm just squishing
Yeah.
things. We have our squeeze bottle. I just squirt it over the tray,
Yeah.
and then I just pour it all into a bowl. This is a no recipe really.
Yes, we love those. So you just slice a lemon, you put a halve on the sheet tray with the broccoli so it gets that nice roasted finish as if you were just putting it on the grill real quickly.
I always do this. I always have I love lemon, so I'm very much a citrus freak. So I
Yes.
will always slice the lemon into two halves. I put them the cut side down on the tray on parchment paper. I always add a little bit of olive oil. I coat the lemon in a touch of olive oil and then I put it on cut side down. And then when you take your veggies out of the oven, the lemon is caramelized, so it's got a nice look to it. I often will serve the caramelized lemon on my serving tray because I just think it looks pretty. But the purpose in roasting it is to add a little bit of that caramelization, which is a sweetness. And also it just makes the lemon really juicy. So, you know, sometimes you squeeze a lemon and you don't get a lot of juice out of it, but when you roast the lemon, it gets extra juicy. So I always squeeze it roasted over my veggies and you just get a little bit, it goes on, it just takes that lemon a little bit further.
I really like this idea. If I also wanted to put together a dessert, what's one of the dessert recipes in your book that you recommend that we look up for using tahini?
Again, I guess in the interests of keeping things simple, because the dessert section is goes from very basic to quite complex desserts, and so you know I'm all in for making a complex dessert if I'm entertaining. I love to have a centerpiece dessert that looks dramatic and special. So lots there's lots of those, but I think for the purposes of this conversation, you know, I always again like to come to simple things. And one of the very, very first, I think it was the first simple dessert recipe that we came up with at Cedar Mill when we were trying to help people think about tahini as a sweet as well as a savory ingredient. We melted some dark chocolate. I added some tahini. I just stirred it together. I put it in the fridge. I let it set. I dusted I then cut it into cubes, dusted it in cocoa, three ingredients, done. Happens to be vegan, but I don't always say, "Oh, it's vegan," because I'm not personally a vegan, so I don't like to kind of always pull that out. It just is a coincidence that it's vegan. But the tahini is creating a tahini chocolate truffle that is so simple. And you know, at the end of a meal, you're full. Sometimes you just want a cup of, I'll always, when I entertain, I always serve mint tea at the end of every meal. I love having a fresh pot of mint tea, just hot water and the sprigs of mint. And then next to that, I'll always have a little tray. You can serve a little tray of halva cubes, or I love these tahini chocolate truffles because they're simple. It just gives everybody one sweet bite without taking everybody a little bit too far.
Yeah, I love that suggestion. That sounds really good and approachable.
I mean, honestly, three ingredients, 5 minutes of work, you're done.
I'd love to know from you what the difference is with black tahini and the white tahini that we're used to seeing. Have you played much with the black tahini?
Yeah, so the difference is really one is made with by grinding white sesame seeds, and the other is made with grinding black sesame seeds. It's just a simple seed varietal. But black tahini has a very strong taste, so it just means it is quite hard to use it in a culinary setting because it's just such a powerful taste. I personally find it hard to use. The one place that we use it a lot at Cedar Mill, which I do love, is with our ice cream. So we often add black tahini to our ice cream base, and we rotate our flavors a lot, but black tahini soft serve is on our menu quite a lot. And we also drizzle a little bit of black tahini over our tahini soft serve. So we make our base mix with white tahini, or lately I've been calling it golden tahini. Somebody said, "Would you like black tahini or golden tahini?" And I thought that was a much nicer way of calling it because it's not actually white. The seeds are not white; they are golden. So I thought that's a better way.
Yeah.
But but I think the black tahini really needs to be paired with something where you're balancing something very sweet, or you're adding it for color. You can add it to Greek yogurt for color. But yeah, it's a bit tricky. I think in my book I've got one black sesame recipe, which is a smoothie, which is a blueberry. It's a very dramatic smoothie, but it calls for wild blueberries, some black tahini, and coconut milk, and they're all very bold flavors that somehow balance each other out.
I bring up the black tahini just because I know black sesame seeds are really good for hair growth. Like it's a very good traditional way to get your hair longer and thicker without having to go out and buy a lot of supplements. Like how do we use, our food and our spices and these simple ingredients to support our physical bodies? What are some of the health benefits you've discovered about white sesame since you've been in this world for so long?
I didn't know that about hair growth, Whitney. That's really fascinating to me. I'm interested
I'll
in that.
I'll follow up with you. I'll send some screenshots from this one book that I have that gives a lot of recipes on how to use black sesame seeds for traditional beauty regimens.
Interesting. That's good to know. I mean, speaking of beauty regimens, one sort of other entrepreneur in the beauty industry that I just am obsessed with is Bobbi Brown.
Yeah.
Bobbi has had multiple brands and she's got a memoir coming out soon. And she's been such a great supporter of our brand and all. She's just such a great woman who lifts other entrepreneurs up and is always celebrating others. But I met her at our store about 8 years ago because she's a tahini fan and loved our ice cream, and she was always visiting our store. So we started to have a conversation, and one day she described tahini to me as though she said it's like moisturizer, but for your insides. And I liked that analogy of, we put oils and creams on our outside, but tahini's almost that moisturizer for your insides. So I really love that metaphor. But the big call out, if you're asking me about health benefits, the big call out that sesame brings is calcium. It's a hugely rich, it's a phenomenally rich source of calcium. And it has other benefits. I'm not a doctor, so I'm sometimes a little bit, or I'm not a nutritionalist, so I get self-conscious wanting to over, I don't want to own this conversation too much, but I do know from my extensive research and conversations with professionals on this topic that anyone with a osteo concern, or particularly for people like pregnancy or breastfeeding or even young children to promote really good bone health and bone growth, calcium is a phenomenal source for that. And I often talk to young parents and say to introduce tahini into a young child's diet, which can be tricky, you could mash a banana up with a little bit of like one teaspoon of tahini with some mashed banana is a great way to introduce it to little babies, or to add tahini to a smoothie, or to add it to ice cream, which are clearly appealing things for kids. That's a really great way to introduce it.
Yeah, it's also great just drizzled on a banana bread or a muffin or any of those vehicles which kids are more open to. Taking and eating and nibbling on, you can add a little drizzle on that and it's so nice.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Yeah. I mean, my own kids are a little bit tired of tahini, but then sometimes I'll surprise them and I often make, I don't know, like tahini cookies, like chocolate chip tahini cookies, which I love. And sometimes, my kids are so mean to me. They're like, Mom, have you put tahini in this? Because they're just sick and tired of me putting tahini in everything and they're annoyed. But sometimes I put it in and I just don't tell them. And then they'll have a bite of a chocolate chip cookie and they'll go, wow, these are the best cookies you've ever made.
Little do you know, in a few years, once they've left home, you'll visit them, you'll go into their kitchen, and their cabinet will be filled with tahinis and sesame seeds because, they just miss what you've been making for them at home. The time will come.
I know my daughter's name is Annika, and I'm like, Annika, one day you're going to be proud of me. I'm going to keep this recording, and I'm going to make her listen to it in 10 years, and I'll say, see, I did do
Yeah.
something that meets your approval.
Yeah, absolutely. It always comes back around. It takes a while, but it comes back around. I'd love to know, though, since you are in the food space in one of the best cities in the world, New York, what do you love eating right now? It's about to be fall. It's my favorite season for food and vegetables, and it's, I think, the best season for using tahini. So, like, where do you like to go in the city? What are you buying and making for yourself right now?
Oh, that's a hard question because well, two things. I guess I cook a lot at home. I love to cook. So I eat out, but I wouldn't say I eat out a ton. And when I do eat out, I love to be close to my sort of neighborhoody local places. I love feeling like a local and a member of an extended family in that hospitality sense. So I think that there's two places I'll kind of call out. My first is really my absolute favorite local restaurant, which is called Chouquette, and I it's on 24th Street, really close to my apartment. And Chouquette is owned by two women, Vicky Freeman, her husband, and then the chef Aisha Najada. And Aisha's having a great moment right now. She's like, her star is just rising. She's got a cookbook coming out next year, and she uses a lot of tahini on her menu. And she's even got her own tahini soft serve dessert. So definitely that is my favorite place to eat out in my neighborhood. The other place that I love is a bakery called Honey's Bakery, Hanis, and owned by a couple, Miro and Shilpa. And um, they're both, they named Honey's after Miro's mom, whose name was Honey. And I love places where you really feel that history and the sentiment. And I know it sounds like a cliche, Whitney, and I don't mean to just sound all woo-woo, but I genuinely feel that when something is made with love and made with intention and just made with so much joy, and you can feel it. And Miro and Shilpa make such beautiful baked goods, all sorts of like sweets and sandwiches, and they actually also have a soft serve. Soft serve. This is a coincidence. I'm not calling this out, but they also have a great soft serve that they just launched. And I don't know. I love watching other people do things really bravely. It's hard. You and I both know in the food industry, it sounds glamorous, but it's such hard, bone breaking, back breaking, sorry, work. Um, and it's like I always say to people, don't go into this industry. It's so hard. But anyway, I love to celebrate people who are just working their absolute asses off and doing great things.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing with food because it's such a physical labor, it's such a mental labor, and it requires heart and intention for you to get the outcome that you want. It requires all layers of you and your soul in order to execute the mission. Which I think we all know, and anyone who's listening, we've all had an experience where we had a job where we just had to go to an office and we could walk away and disconnect afterwards. And when you're in the culinary or hospitality industry, you can never disconnect. You're attached at all times.
And
So it's really like a soul calling. For whatever reason, we have to move through this experience to understand what it takes to um, put food out into the world. Um,
I'm glad you commented a little, or this backwards and forwards moment is really important to me. And I think, I worked as a waitress for years and years and years when I was at college. When I was studying to be a lawyer, I worked at one restaurant for 5 years, hours and hours a week, and that's probably where I really grew a love of the industry, but also I got to see the back of house of that industry. And I think everybody at some point in their lives should be a server or a waitress or work in the food industry and in some sort of customer service role, because when you see how hard people work to put food on people's tables, it's so much harder than anybody imagines. And when things don't go to plan, or your meal doesn't come out exactly on time, or something isn't perfect, I wish people would rather than just launch into I'm giving you a 1-star review, or I'm going to write a terrible Google Yelp review, or I'm going to yell at the server, or I'm going to do this or do that. I just wish people could just catch their breath and just say, it's really hard work. And people are not always going to meet your expectations 1,000,000%, but just try to remember that 99.9% of the time, we're just trying our best. And please just know that it is hard, and no one is ever trying to intentionally give you a poor meal. So maybe just hold back that nasty review and see them as humans doing vital work that's pretty uncelebrated a lot of the time.
Well, this is really important because this is why we're having the crisis in food anyway, because people's expectation is consistency with a product that can't be consistent because Mother Nature doesn't allow the banana to always grow the same size with the same flavor profile and ripen at someone's expectations. There's so much variables in food, and there's so many variables with us humans that are preparing the meal. And with that in mind, your meal can never come out looking the same way as it did last time. And people's expectation that it has to be the same every time is what created this GMO food experience we're having. And so if we can all get comfortable with variables and things not always being perfect and ebbs and flows, if we can all become a little more flexible with food, I think we can become more flexible in our lives, and things can get lighter for all of us.
Whitney, I have goosebumps listening to you say this, because I think, we are living through times where their temperatures are so out of control, people are so angry, and they're not actually accepting that maybe a little bit of flexibility and giving people a little bit of leeway, just lowering that temperature, is so important. But I'm glad you also mentioned what handmade food looks like. It doesn't look consistent, and you're right, it doesn't come out of a factory that's just making widgets, a million of them a day. And that sometimes means, for in our case, it sometimes means that the halva could be a little bit oily because we're not packing it with palm oil, or the consistency, you won't have the same amount of chocolate chips or pistachios in every batch. We make every product by hand. And you'd be amazed. I've had people complain to me before, I'm not kidding. Oh, I bought your chocolate chip halva, and there weren't the same amount of chocolate chips in my piece as on your website. I'm not kidding. And I'm like, yeah, I know, it's because it's handmade, and I don't control or count every chocolate chip that goes into every slice, but is it still delicious? Like, can we just leave it at that?
Yeah, you are experiencing, I think, what anyone experiences in the food industry. Until you're on the other side, you don't understand. But hopefully it's allowing us to be a little lighter and more flexible in life, which will naturally, I hope, extend to the other people around us.
Yeah.
But I hope this is supporting anyone who's listening who has been frustrated with their restaurant experiences as of late. And when you see in the news that a lot of places are going more, how do you explain it? They're trying to create more systems, like Sweet Green, which is in New York, which is in California, which started in Washington, D.C. They're trying to bring more tech into creating your salad because they're trying to remove humans from it so you can have the consistency that you so desire. But I promise you, when you remove the human touch, the flavor is going to change, and you might not enjoy it as much because it's that touch. It's the human experience connection with food that also adds to the flavor of what you're eating.
Oh, 100%. And I'm all in. I think we all understand that a convenient to go salad when you're in a rush. I eat a sweet green salad all the time when I'm on the road, or I'm busy. But I'm always amazed when I meet someone who literally never makes their own salad dressing or buys, anyone. Sorry, I'm sounding a little bit judgy. I'm sorry, but
That's
like I would
fine.
never buy a salad dressing. Because why, when it takes you 30 seconds just to squeeze some tahini and a lemon and something a little bit homemade, there's a creative expression there, and there's some sort of moment of consciousness and just presence in your meal and engaging with the food, thinking about where it comes from, preparing it. That's all sort of, for me, that's part of a small way of meditating. And people are probably laughing at me because I'm not a meditator. I'm a very like busy, talk too much person. But honestly, preparing a salad at home and just chopping those vegetables, thinking about some connection to the farm where the vegetables were grown, thinking about what it takes. My husband's actually a farmer, or his parents grew up on a farm, and he grew up on a farm. So I'm very also aware of the labor and the heartache that it takes to grow our food. So having a moment to think about that by cooking and engaging with it yourself is so meaningful.
To know, how do you nourish yourself? So you create a product that gives so much to other people. You guys are forward facing with the customer. So you're not just a product that people can pick up in Whole Foods and in shops or online, but you also have a space that's open 7 days a week where you're connecting with the customer all the time. What do you do to nourish and take care of yourself so you can keep going?
Oh, Whitney, that's a conversation for next time. I have no good answer. In fact, I had surgery a couple of weeks ago and I had to get back to work 3 days after my surgery. I'm the last person to be giving anyone advice about how to nourish themselves. But I would say, on a slightly more positive note, I would say I've really taken so much joy. I will just say, because I know we're kind of getting to the end of this conversation, but writing my book was probably the best thing I've ever done from a career perspective. And being able to go and talk to people about food and listening to how they engage with food, just being able to be on that book tour and actually meeting people in person, and even having this conversation with you, Whitney, you're filling my cup. Um, I feel nourished. Honestly, right now, I feel this is what's nourishing me. And as we talked about before, working in the food industry is really hard. So taking a moment to just like have a joyful conversation, looking you in the eye. Hopefully someone who's listened to this chat will reach out and visit our store or come back and ask some questions. Like that honestly nourishes me.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel you. And I hope you can find a few other things in your weeks ahead that can help your physical body get some good rest. I understand. Make yourself some mint tea.
I know.
That does work wonders. And I'll follow up with you and I'll send you some of the recipes to use black sesame seeds. So
I'd love that.
after your surgery, your hair can get thick and more beautiful again, because I know how that can affect people sometimes.
Thank
Um,
you.
As we wrap up, could you maybe share just one last tip people can consider when they're in the kitchen and they want to play with tahini?
I mean, I guess I would just say it's a very flexible ingredient in that. So, going to the most basic tahini dressing, the sort of classic dressing for me is tahini, lemon, and water and salt. So, that is the classic recipe. But the one tip I would say is that as you're mixing those ingredients together, you'll think it's seized or it'll look like it's sort of clumpy and lumpy. Just keep whisking with a fork or a whisk. Just keep going, and as you go, if it's too thick and clumpy, all you need is more water and you'll get there. Or if it's too thin and it ended up being too liquidy and you wanted something thicker, just add more tahini. But I would just say there is absolutely no way you will go wrong as long as you are able to calibrate and not panic. Just keep adding a bit more water, a little bit of water, or a little bit more tahini, a little bit more salt, a little bit more lemon, but just taste your food as you go and watch what you're doing. And I promise you it'll come together. It's a no fail recipe to me.
Well, it's a perfect analogy from an entrepreneur and a mother about life. If you just keep going, well, you'll ultimately get the consistency you want. May have to add things here or there, but just keep stirring.
That's great. I love that.
Yeah, so that's what I'm gonna take away from this is next time I make my tahini, just know it's like life, just keep stirring and it'll get there.
That's a great metaphor. I have loved talking to you, Whitney.
I
One of
have
my favorite
loved it
conversations.
too. Yeah, this has been such a treat, and now I'm fantasizing about visiting New York because fall is my favorite time of year in the city, and nobody does food quite like New York City.
Well, make sure that you come and visit us. And everyone listening, we're here to give you lots of samples. So come say hi.
We will. Thank you so much, Rachel. I appreciate you. And I just wish you so much success with the book. I hope that when people think tahini, that they can always grab your book and find more ways to use the product at home. So thank you for this insight today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.